What's up guys, my name is Bryson. I'm going to be demonstrating the barbell back squat exercise. This is a great multi-joint resistance exercise and strength conditioning. It's great for, depending on the athlete's programming or training specifications, it's good for power, strength, hypertrophy. You'll see this a lot in a lot of sports that have a lot of low body power, pushing, driving, so things like football, field sports, track and field, sometimes soccer, a little bit of basketball. In terms of squats, really good lower body exercise. It's good for your posterior chain, hamstrings, quads, glutes, all that. And before you attempt the squat, one thing I recommend is get some fundamental movement patterns down. Among those is probably a body weight squat, knowing how to squat to depth before you try to squat with resistance. With that, knowing how to hip hinge, so knowing how to sit back into your hips with the squat rather than leaning with your back or driving too forward with your knees or things like that. In terms of warming up for the squat, there's about 5 exercises you can go through. First off, I recommend some sort of lunge movement. Try and work on the hip flexors, the knees, warm those areas up a bit. Feel free to add a reach or a tuck under if you want. Another thing is glute bridges. I'm not going to demonstrate those, but that's good for your hip flexing, hip hinging type movements. Also, another good exercise would be ankle dorsiflexion. So learning how to track over your knee with a squat, because there is a bit of ankle mobility involved. Also recommend opening the gate, closing the gate. Good for also hip flexibility, getting ready for that. And then just as a preparatory movement for the squat, I would recommend a few reps of body weight squats just to get that dynamic movement pattern down. In terms of setup for the barbell squat, before you begin, you want to make sure the barbell is the height of your clavicle or your collarbone, and then also make sure that the safety bars are at this appropriate height for when you reach squat depth, should you need to dump the bar or bail or anything like that. So setting up for the squat, it's going to be double pronated grip, slightly wider than shoulder width. For this demonstration, I'm going to go with the high bar position for the squat. With the high bar position, the bar is going to rest slightly above my posterior deltoids at the base of my neck, right on the trap shelf. And that shelf is made by holding your elbows at an angle. In terms of liftoff, you're going to drive with your knees, extend your hips, take 1 to 2 steps back. Your feet should be shoulder width or just slightly wider with the toes out. And then to descend, you're going to keep your head up, eyes straight, chest out and forward. And you're going to hip hinge, neutral spine, down to the sticking point where your femurs are parallel with the floor, your thighs are parallel with the floor. And then you're going to extend up with your hips and your knees, chest up, eyes forward. And that's how you complete a rep. I'm going to complete one more rep from the side, just to get a view of that. Like I said, hinge with the hips, flex the knees and hips simultaneously, reach depth, and then extend with the knees and hips at the same rate. And then you're going to take a step 2 forward, and then re-rack. A few tips with that, things that typically go wrong. One of the biggest things is something called valgus collapse. When you're squatting, your knees tend to collapse inward. So you want to make sure your knees track over the middle of your foot and stay midway of the foot, horizontally and vertically. Also, try not to lean too far forward on your toes, your heels. It's a great way to dump the bar or lose control of the weight. In terms of backing off from the bar, try not to stutter step too much. That's a great way to expend energy that's not necessary with those isometric holds where you might dump the weight shifting back and forth. Also, be careful not to round your back. It's a great way to get injured or put a lot of stress on the back. It's not necessary. And then lastly, for verbal cues, just get your athlete to understand what they're doing or like how to coach them properly. One thing I would say is try and drive through the floor, like push your feet through the floor like you're going to push a hole in the floor. Another one would be sit between your hips and not on your knees. It's a great way to try and teach them how to hip hinge by sitting between their hips. And then I would also say One thing my coach used to tell me is chest proud, eyes forward. It's a great way to make sure neutral spine, head stays straight so they're not lumbar curving or curving their neck or anything like that. So yeah, that's a demo of the squat.